My years at sea as quartermaster have brought me on many adventures. However, the best is yet to come. Full sail! Let's catch some wind. All are set a course. We're sailing for the assassin's den.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Assassin's Den. I'm your host Loomer, along with Andy EscoBlades, a community developer with AC Initiates. Hello Esco.
Hi there, how you doing?
Good. And our
Happy
guest,
New Year.
What? Happy New Year, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And our guest today is Tristan Lalla, a theater, voice, and film actor, better known to us in the Assassin's Creed community as Agate in AC3 Liberation and Adewale in Assassin's Creed 4 and Freedom Cry. So Tristan, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. How you guys doing?
Pretty good. Now, as always, we've collected questions from the Assassin's Creed community that we'll be asking throughout the show. And as a warning, we will be discussing spoilers from both Assassin's Creed 4 and Freedom Cry, so watch out for that. Now, to start off, Tristan, I was wondering if you could give kind of a quick summary of your pre-AC acting background, just how you got involved in some of the things that you've worked on, just for those who aren't familiar. We have a question from Toxic Shadow 197 from Las Vegas who asks, like, how did you get into voice acting? But I think it's more than voice acting, right?
Yeah, how far back? I guess I'll start at the beginning. It's the best place to start.
Sure.
I've been acting since I was a teenager, professionally since I was about 18. I come from a family of a lot of musicians and artists, and I went to theater school up here in Montreal for 3 years, Dawson College's professional theater program. Upon graduation, I did a lot of theater gigs, and naturally auditioning led to a lot of theater and film and TV and commercial work. And as is the industry, you get to audition for all kinds of things: cartoons, video games, commercials, all these things. So when I had a video game audition, I went in like any other audition, did my thing, and I could kind of trace all the games that I've been a part of back to like that audition, because one thing always leads to the next. So yeah, like anything, just it all starts with an audition. So that's how we are where we are now.
Which audition was that for? What part?
I won't say the game because I didn't get it, but but the director of that game, the voice director, remembered me for the next thing he was working on, and then brought me in, and then I worked on that, and then I worked on something else, and then I worked on something else. So
I see. What was the first video game that you voice acted for?
The first full game that I worked on was Far Cry 2. So every little guy in the village in Far Cry 2 that you kill is me. There's two of us actually. Julian Casey, who plays Buck in Far Cry 3.
Yeah.
So Julian and I play all the guys in Far Cry 2 in the villages that you kill. So we had a lot of time in the studio together recording those voices. Yeah.
That's great. So we have another question from Master Assassin 65. So this is kind of pre-Assassin's Creed. But he asks, what was your first impression of the Assassin's Creed franchise when you first got to know about it? We have a similar question from Patrick from Pennsylvania who asks, did you have any prior knowledge of the Assassin's Creed franchise?
Well, Patrick and Master Assassin, yes. I've been playing AC since the inception of it. I'm just looking at my pile of games in front of me right now. I have all of them pretty much. So I've been a fan since the beginning, like most of us. And when I finally learned that there's a possibility that I will be able to kind of join what's been going on, I'm not gonna lie, had a little bit of a moment, but yeah, it felt great. It was cool.
Oh, that's awesome. I gotta ask this question. Who is your favorite non-Adewale assassin from the main games?
Oh man, who's my favorite? Like, it's funny because a lot of us work together on not just games but theater things over the years. Like Neil Napier is a good friend of mine who plays Charles Lee. Yeah. Like he helped me move into my place, Sean Baichu, who does a lot of stuff. Amber Goldfarb, who plays Aveline. Like we're all friends in many respects. But I gotta say, my favorite character from the games, if not Altair, because it's Altair, and Cass Anvar, who's a good friend of mine as well, who gave me my first job. Really, Cass started a theater company when he was out of school, like years ago. And when I graduated school, that theater company, which does Shakespeare in the Park, hired me for my first job. So Altair gave me my first job. Yeah, but I would probably say Achilles or Xiaojun.
Oh,
All right.
those are some
Yeah,
unconventional
just because
choices.
exactly, just because they're so, for me, they're interesting. They're not like the typical storyline that you want to follow, you want to know about. But Achilles was just a badass to me, and I loved him. So I really, yeah,
Putting Connor in his place.
I had to. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. That's actually, so that's a good way. You talked about auditions and, sort of like auditioning for roles which lead to more and stuff. I'm interested to know what your impression was of Adewale, which is the most recent one you've done. What was your impression of that character when you first read the script? Or did you get a chance to read all of it beforehand, or was it a case of you, as you went along, Darby introduced more of it to you?
Yeah, so we never really get to read the entire scripts ever on any game, because it's very much you film over many months and you record over many months, and so the scenes that we're doing, in April, June, July, whatever, we'll get those scenes, and then later on when we come back, when the cast is all together, we'll get those next set of scenes.
Okay.
So it's never like one thick script that you can actually read top to tail.
Yeah.
But early on, the Adewale that we see in the games now, he wasn't like that clearly defined in terms of, like, Darby was very clear of who he wanted this character to be, but in terms of the structure of who this man was, it wasn't set in stone from the beginning at all. And so as we went along, as we played, as we got to learn each other in the cast, learn how we work together, learn the dynamics between Darby's writing and Kama Dunsmore, who directed us, the cinematics, and how she works, a lot of different things got to change as we went along. And so Adewale became who he is now through all of our discoveries. But initially, I loved what was written, and I saw an opportunity to be like, okay, maybe he can also have these traits and these qualities. So we brought that to the table.
Okay, that's good. It's good to hear that was obviously a collaborative process as opposed to a one-way sort of dictation or dialogue. And that was based off. Sorry, I forgot to add that it was based off a question by Tifa Cloud Leon from Texas. I'm going to jump onto another community question from Wesley in Cacapava, Brazil.
Say that again.
Cacapava. And he asks, what was the most difficult thing to perform as Adewale? That's a loaded question, but yeah.
Well, there was a scene where I had to say Cacapava. And it was like, no. Damn. What was the most difficult thing to perform as Adewale? A lot of times, a lot of us who work in games will refer to as voice actors. It's full performance capture now. So it's your voice, yes, but it's also your body, your complete body's movement. And several times it's also your full facial features. That's not the case with me, with Adewale, of course. He doesn't look like me, but everything that he does physically and everything that he says and everything that he feels emotionally is all one smooth performance that then they take, put into the system, and animate over that. So a lot of the physical, those performance the mocap suits are not flattering. They are the most humbling things in the world. So there, some days can be pretty long, pretty strenuous. Some days are really easy in terms of the length that the depth with which you have to go emotionally. But I would have to say the physical attributes to the entire performance take a much greater toll than people realize. So for me, that would probably be the most difficult. The fun part was, just playing, just work. Like when work doesn't feel like work, then it's fun. So, and it should be that.
You talk about emotional depths. What do you think was the most difficult, like emotionally deep thing that you perform, line or scene that you had to do?
Wow. Well, definitely things get taken up a few notches for Freedom Cry as opposed to the main campaign in Black Flag.
Yeah.
In Black Flag, there was a few things, and there was things that changed along the way that we might have reshot some things between Edward and Adewale as their relationship kind of grew apart when Edward. Spoiler alert: when Edward, goes to jail and all that shit.
Yep.
But Freedom Cry was just a whole nother level of wow. There were several times because of the subject matter, because of the content, and because we were literally, creating that environment, that world, we needed to crack a lot of jokes in the studio because because it's heavy enough. It's not to be taken lightly, and it's not a joke. And even though just the concept of, I remember when I told like one of my boys, I'm like, yeah, this is what the game is based on, and he said, that's a game. That's not fun. I'm like, it's not a game in that sense. You can still have a serious subject matter in a video game, but it doesn't have to be like you're not collecting, it's not that type of game. So, but there was a lot of things in Freedom Cry that we just needed to, have a few drinks after work and take a swim or just like walk away from it and not bring that home.
Yeah. One scene that sticks out to me a lot is at the very end of Freedom Cry when you're killing Governor Lafayette, I think. And I love the line actually when he says like, I've killed many men out of principle, but like never having wanted one to suffer. Might be butchering the exact wording. Suffer as much as you, basically.
And Marcel Janine, who plays the governor, a good friend of mine as well. He also plays Aveline's father in Liberation. And he, because we're really good friends and we've done a few plays together as well over the years, we really were just able to play and just mess with each other because it went to a really dark place of, no, I got to get this out of my system because I don't like your face and your face has to die. But Mars, he was a great sport and we made sure to be safe and not, really hurt each other. But it goes there. Definitely went there.
Sure.
That's the thing. And you mentioned that difference between voice acting and performance capture. And how do you prepare for that? Because it's a complete step up, isn't it? It's like, whereas you're in a booth recording your voice and trying to convey the emotion of whatever is going to be shown on screen. With performance capture, there's like I guess and mocap, there's stunts involved to a certain degree. I guess like you said, it's your actions and stuff that's animated. So how different is it to prepare for those, and what do you have to do?
It's actually not that much of a huge difference. Acting is acting. Yeah. Yes, there are different mediums, different forms. Stage is not film, is not audio. They're all different mediums, but it all comes down to story and plot and character development. So once you're telling the story, you're doing your job.
Yep.
And so on stage, there's a different way that you have to tell the story physically, vocally, emotionally than you do it on film. There's a lot of schools of thought when it comes to movies and TV acting that, if you think it'll pop up on the screen, which is not always the case, but there's a big subtlety that you're able to do on screen that you can't do on stage. But when it gets to performance capture and motion capture for video games, it's a whole new type of performance. And so a lot of us who do it have a big theatrical background. Like I sing and dance and I do musicals and I've done that my whole life, but when it comes to mixing that with then the subtleties of having cameras literally in your face for the entire day and little markers taped all over your body, but your body is still needed to be big and expressive so that it registers into the computer system. It's a big marriage of the two worlds. And then there's the vocal aspect that, like, when you do a scene in a mocap studio, you have to do the entire scene. You can't do just one line and then cut to the next. You got to do the entire thing back to back, over and over and over, and again and again and again and again and again and again, like a radioactive man. And there's this, because a lot of us have theater backgrounds. Like I said, we're used to that live performance aspect, that you do the entirety of the play. You don't just do a scene. But because we also work in film and TV and movies, we know that there's a way to play to the camera and get your angles and get those things out of it as well. So it's a big marriage, and it's like a whole new art form that's being created in the last 5, 6, 7 years. It's amazing.
So I was curious a little bit about kind of shaping Adewale's voice, and also how you view his personality. So just on this topic of his voice, like Adewale's voice is much deeper than your normal speaking voice, and kind of I was curious how you worked into creating that.
That is a good question. So, Adewale, so how it works is usually like this. For every day of shooting, there'll be a day of rehearsal. And so we get together with Darby, with Kama, and the cast is there, and we read the scenes, we go through everything, and then we talk about it. So if anything needs to be adjusted or changed, maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. But we go through the scenes thoroughly, so that there's understanding in the room of everybody knows what's going on, who's feeling what, who's saying what to whom. And then we get on our feet, and then we block out the scene physically so that we know who's moving where once we get into the studio on whatever day we're shooting. And so physically, as we started to move and play, the vocal tone that we ended up settling in on and choosing for Ade, I needed to play a lot off of what Matt Ryan was doing, who plays Edward Kenway. And Matt has a very different vocal quality than I do. And also just how the character is written. He's very rooted. He's very grounded. He's kind of like, even though they're probably this like roughly the same in age, early 30s, he's like the wise old owl of the ship. Yeah. And so I wanted to find something vocally that also expresses that wisdom, but also that empathy in his voice, that allows him to just be a real person that cares, but not too much. That's strong, but he's also weak and vulnerable when he needs to be. But he's just truthful, and he's filled with like compassion and love. But he'll fuck you up if you mess with him. Like, like he's, So there's a big duality that lives within him. That vocally, I wanted to find something that reflects that, and hopefully I did a good job. So
yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. And what I love about the voice is that it does kind of convey his immense like physical presence. I think he might be the like most built, like gigantic assassin in the whole lineup.
He's huge. He's like, what's that dude? He's like Terry Crews or whatever.
Yeah.
It's massive.
Templar.
Like like I myself, I'm like 5'9" on a good day, depending on what shoes I wear. I don't want to. Ade's like 6'3", 6'4". I think he's maybe 6'5". Like he's tall and he's big. He's built. So it needed to reflect that as well vocally in his size.
Yeah, what I like is that it comes across that, but it's also, as you said, kind of, you can hear it's also very gentle a lot of the times, and kind of wise and compassionate. And I love that kind of duality, as you mentioned. It's really great. So we had another question from Lorenzo C. from Anchorage, Alaska, and you kind of touched on this, but he was asking, how would you describe Adewale in your own words? I don't know if you had anything to add to what you were mentioning before.
Well, yeah, I guess. Thank you, Lorenzo, for the question. There's something to be said about whenever I'm playing a character, if the full, like, there's always a backstory that's created by the amazing writers, but sometimes it's always good to go deeper into whatever personal backstory you want to give your character. And so there's also something to be said about those who go through traumatic experiences, who go through things that they've had to live through, not by choice, but just by circumstance, by birth or whatever. And Adewale also had to go through that as a child. And so there's something to be said about when you go through something like being enslaved, like having to live through harsh conditions like that, and see your loved ones whipped and, burned and all these things and hung. You don't want to be violent. you have to be for necessity, but it's not a choice, right? So I think the gentleness and the calmness comes from that aspect of wanting to be in a place of peace, but knowing that if he had to not be in that place, he can handle himself.
Another question from Hodge from Bristol, England, who asks, are there any personality and character traits you share with Adewale, such as his loyalty, nobility, etc.? Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you for the question. Yeah, a lot of things that I've done, I guess, not just career-wise, but in life. Like I'm the sidekick a lot. Like I play a lot of like the best friend or the guy you can talk to or the sidekick or the friend or the guy or the friend or the best friend or the sidekick. Even like, growing up, I was always like the wingman with my friends. Like I've always been that guy. And so I definitely relate on that aspect. Because, well, I guess this is a fun fact too. Originally, Adewale was supposed to be from Martinique, but my entire background, my whole family's from Trinidad. So early on, speaking with Darby, I'm like, well, what if he was Trinidadian? And then we went with that, and he became a fully Trinidadian character. The same with Matt. Matt was, he's from Wales, and they realized it might be better if, Matt, why not just make Edward Welsh? So that's what happened. So I relate on that aspect as well with him. Even though he's not modeled after me, his left eyebrow kind of looks like my eyebrow. That's about it.
You've talked about the dynamic between some of the other actors, and you've mentioned Matt Ryan, obviously, who plays Edward Kenway in the game. So Assassino4 from Paris, France asks, what was it like, or how was it to work with the other voice actors? I'll say performance actors, Matt Ryan, for example.
In a word, amazing. Like these guys, just to name a few, like as spoilers again, spoiler alert. For those of you who have played the game, you know how amazing this cast is. So like most of the cast came in from the UK. There were a few of us from Montreal who live here. But these guys were just so much fun to work with. Like Ralph Einstein, who plays Charles Vane. Man, this guy is so much fun. I remember seeing him in Game of Thrones. He's in the Harry Potter movies. He was on The Office. Yeah. But I really I recognized him from Coronation Street. And I'm like, yo, you're that dude from Corey. He's like, you watch Corey. I'm like, his voice is so
so deep.
I'm like, yeah. And like I really got along with everybody, really. But those of us who were there quite a lot together, we really had a lot of time to socialize and go out. And Mark Bonar, who plays Blackbeard. That's my boy. Well, he's a grown man, but yeah, we're friends. Sean Dingwall, who plays Woods Rogers. Yeah. I'm like, yo, you are what's her name's dad from Doctor Who? He's like, yeah, that's me. Like, just phenomenal actors. Yeah. Ed Stoppard, who plays Ben Hornigold. Like, I don't know if you guys are theater people, but like in the theater community, like everybody knows who Tom Stoppard is. Yeah. And like that's Ed's father, and we're like, "Yo, you are Tom Stoppard." Like it was just a lot of kind of like fanboy moments with everybody who they kept flying in. I'm like, "You guys need to stop because I'm not gonna make it to keep bringing in all these amazing actors." It was a lot of fun.
For me, anyway, it felt like it came across that way as well. It felt like it was a sort of you were almost one big family. And the interactions, obviously video game. So in that sense, the medium itself is obviously limited to a degree in terms of what you can portray. But I really got the impression that there was that genuine sort of harmony when it came to all of the performances that you get to see in the game. So that doesn't surprise me that you guys got on. We have another community question which kind of links into that, and I'm going to butcher this name, so I apologize. It's Wifki with Janako from Saudi Arabia.
It's going well. It's going really well.
Not bad.
And he or she asks, were there any funny moments when you were voicing Adewale? So I guess that that applies to with the other actors as well. But yeah,
Absolutely. There's stories that I will not tell. There's stories that I cannot tell. But there were absolutely some times when, oh man, what can I share? Anecdotal. There's a lot of us. Sometimes all of us in the scene are not in the same room, and so what you see in the final game in the scene, there will be actors who are just doing the motion capture, and then later on, the actual actors who voice the characters will do the voices. Like for instance, there's times when, well, basically every scene that I got to shoot with Anne Bonny or James Kidd, the actors playing Anne and James were not in the room, but I can't even tell that story. Okay, spoiler alert again.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. So the end of the game, that beautiful musical number that you see, where everyone's at the table and the guys are playing the music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so like Darby played us a song. He's like, I think we're gonna end with this, and there was literally like a silence in the room, and everybody was like, oh, it's so nice. But so all of the guys at the table, that's three of us who did all of those guys. Like we all played each other, and then all the guys playing the music on the stairs. That's the same three of us playing all those characters. And so we do like one pass where you'll have us playing, the drum, the guitar, and then knocking on the stairs. Then another pass when one guy's playing a flute, one guy's playing a lute, one guy is just dancing in the back, and trying to look at each other and not crack the fuck up. Wow. And Amber. Actually, I shouldn't even tell that one. So
This is a safe environment, Tristan. You can be open.
There was a lot of times, as we see throughout the game, Edward and Adewale have quite the relationship. And so there was a lot of times when we would read the scene and then we'd be like, Darby, is this about something else, or is this about? And then once we get into shooting it, it always ended with Matt and I looking at each other and about to like just passionately kiss or something, because we're like, this is like a love scene, man. Like why is he so angry that he doesn't want to? He just walks away. He's like, no. And Matt looks at me and he reached out one time and our arms, and then our eyes had to like not look at each other and walk across the beach.
The Tumblr community is going wild right now.
I was just gonna say.
I know. But hey, I've already seen some graphic stuff on Tumblr. So, but sometimes in the mocap studio, it definitely went there, and we had to stop and just have a good laugh, and then collect ourselves, and yeah, fun times.
Did any of those instances with Anne and Mary involve Adewale? Like playing their parts with a high-pitched Adewale voice.
Maybe yes, maybe no, but I can't tell those stories. So
okay.
No.
All right, fair enough.
What goes on tour stays on tour.
Okay, on that note, we'll move on to one of my favorite parts of these types of podcasts, which is where, so this is another question from Wesley I get to say this now. It's Kakabava, Brazil. So what is your favorite line of Adewale in Freedom Cry and or AC4?
Actually, you said it. Well, you said the beginning of it. It's when I'm with the governor at the end of the spoiler, at the end of Freedom Cry. Spoiler alert once again. The last thing he says to the governor. Well, not the last thing. The second to last thing. What kind of man does not fight for himself? Like that's my favorite line that Ade gets to say, because it echoes a lot of things that have been said in a lot of AC games.
Yeah. Sure.
But in a different way of for me, it rings to the evolution of like historically what these guys are really fighting for. Mm-hmm. And it's almost the antithesis of, what would you have me do? And then it's like, what kind of man doesn't fight for himself? So for me, it's that, it has that resonance to it.
Okay. Well, we have some of our own favorite lines that we would be grateful if you would reproduce for the podcast.
Oh boy.
Yeah, this is put you on the spot, especially with this first one that I have. I really like this moment in Freedom Cry where Adewale is going to the plantation and he has to sing the password to which is taken, I looked this up afterwards, taken from an old Haitian traditional lullaby, and the line translates to, if you don't go to sleep, the crab will eat you.
Right.
And I thought it was, I don't know, kind of a nice little cultural touch to the game. And Adewale sings it very, partially because he has to sing it softly because there's everyone walking around, but it's also kind of like, the duality that we talked about earlier, where he's on one hand this big physical, like he has a huge physical presence, a big hulking man, but he's also can be very kind of tender when he needs to be, especially with Bastien, right? So I'm gonna paste it here. If you would like to bust out your singing voice for the podcast and put you on the spot.
Oh my God. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
You want it to sound like it sounded in the game, or
however you would like to do it. It's totally fine.
So, fun fact: when we recorded this stuff, the melody of this song is very close to this French children's show that we have in Canada called Passepartout. And we were cracking up because it's such a serious thing, and then it's like la 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 la. We're like, what? Why are we like? It's like kids' lullabies, but it's when you research like the real meaning of these lullabies, it's kind of like Ring Around the Rosie. Like these songs are all about like syphilis and dying and the Black Plague. You go to sleep or the shit will eat you. Like it's messed up. Yeah. But he walks on the plantation, he sees her, and then he's like, "S'il pas dodo, crabe la va manger," and it's like, it's so funny. We cracked up because we're like, okay, so the password of like of all things, but it made sense. It made a lot of sense once Jill told us like, okay, well it's this because, and we're like, okay, that's actually really smart. So
yeah, when I saw the line, but it's like the translation, the subtitles, I was like, what the crap? Like, what? This is a little weird. Story took a turn for the weird, but then I looked up the history of it. It's interesting. Did you have like a dialect coach to help you with the pronunciation of it too, as well?
No.
Okay.
Because I speak French. I am. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is this actually French? It's not Haitian Creole.
No, it's French. Well, Creole is a derivative of French, but it's French, yeah.
So it's basically you use the same way you would speak French to do it, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Interesting.
But also, like, just because, like, so Trinidad was once occupied by French people, like from France, and then the Spanish, and then the British, and now it is independent. And so because of all of that history, you still have a lot of places in Trinidad that have French and Spanish names. Like my entire family, I'm a mix. My father is Indo-Caribbean. My mother is Afro-Caribbean. So my mother's black and my dad is like Trini Indian. And his parents are Indian and Spanish. And so like literally, this is really pretentious. My brother hates when I say this shit, but I'll say it. Literally, within us, like we represent in my family what already was in the Caribbean, what came to the Caribbean, and what was brought to the Caribbean. So like I'm a mix of all kinds of things, but because these characters are, Trinidadian, are Caribbean, that was another level that we didn't have to learn or be taught how to, identify with or speak like, because I grew up my whole life listening to my family. Like for me, it's not an accent; that's how people talk.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't use a dialect coach for Ade or anything. No. But I was gonna say, like I'm Canadian. Like I am born in Canada. I like to say I'm born in Canada, designed in Trinidad, and stolen from Africa. So that's my background.
Ah, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I have one more request for one of the lines that I enjoyed while playing through Freedom Cry, actually, where he's talking to Bastien, and she's talking about, oh, like, you really stirred like shit up with the French, and then Adewale just replies with, let the French live in the fear they earned, and it's just kind of just the bile in his voice, because it's such a personal subject for him. I really enjoyed. I was wondering if you'd do a little reproduction.
So, okay, for this to work, Loomer, you have to play Bastien, and then I'll play. So give me a line, give me something to work with.
The
energy,
sultry
and then I'll throw it back.
French accent. Adewale, that you have stirred things up with the French, and you have caused many problems for them.
Let the French live in the fear they earned. Fuck them. No. He didn't say all that. It's all love. Yeah.
Dude, man, that was the best sultry French I've ever heard.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, that's my new calling. You can pass my credentials on.
Fun fact. Bastien Joseph is played by Mariah Inger, who is incredible, and she's beautiful. So Mariah, we went to the same theater school, but she went there. I won't say how many years before, but she went there before me. And I remember Mariah, the first time we met, she came to speak to my graduating class in theater school about how the business is and what we should expect when we get out there. And then here we are, over a decade later, I'm out of school, working, and I get to work with Mariah. And I'm like, wow, this is the first time we work together, finally. And she's like, where did we meet again? I'm like, let me tell you where we met. And then she's like, oh my God, how old are you? And then she had a heart attack. But she's amazing, and she really knocks it out of the park in the game.
Okay, my favorite line is it's the one he says to Edward, this country here is my. Now I'm gonna try it in your accent. This country here is my best chance. This country called Jackdaw. You remember that bit?
Yeah. Who's that supposed to be, Esco? Who's that?
Okay.
Ouch.
I've already had this once when
yes, I remember
when we tried to do the quartermaster.
It's funny. So I was at UB doing some stuff, and I popped in to say hi to Esco and and Gabe, and UB Gabe. And we made some videos and some vines and stuff, and took some pictures, and we posted it. And it was funny because the video was, okay, let's all say quartermaster, like Adewale. And then so Gabe went, and then Esco went, and then I went, and they posted it. And some girl on Twitter is like, oh, the last guy, he was probably the best. He was good. Thanks. I sound like myself.
I feel in that video it got progressively better. It started with Gabe, and it's like less Gabe, and then there was me. I was a bit deeper, and I was closer to the accent. And then Tristan kind of looks at us and he's like, amateurs, and he just does it.
It's like, all right, playtime's over.
Yeah, this is how it's done.
I enjoyed
that.
No,
but this was one of the first things we shot that kind of set the tone. And then once they released, the early trailers and stuff, this was one of the first ones that came out where Ade's like, this country here is my best chance. This country called Jackdaw, where I know the names of all citizens and they know mine, and we work together, not always out of love, but to keep our country afloat. Yeah, there you go.
It's an awesome line. I love how it speaks to, Ade's kind of background and stuff, because, Edward is like, hey, are you going to go back to Africa? And I love that line too, because it's kind of like, he's like,
motherfucker, you can go back to France?
Yeah. He's like kind of, Edward just being kind of like obliviously ignorant in his own little way, like kind of harmlessly. But Ade's kind of just like, I'm making my home out here. And I really like that. So we have some additional requests for lines from the fans. These are not in the game, which is fun. So the top voted one, and it amuses me how highly voted this was, is from Baranov from France. And he asks, hello, Tristan. I would love to hear you say, I'm so tired of your shit, Edward. It's one of the lines I hope to hear from Ade in the game. Haha.
Sorry, small point. Baranov's a she.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry, Baranov. I took a guess.
Wow, Darby, look what you created. Everybody wants to be a writer. Okay, let me say this. So wait, so Esco, you have to play Edward. You gotta tell me something that's so foul and just ignorant, and then I'll hit you with it.
All right. Jesus, Ade, I told you to put up the rigging.
I'm so tired of your shit, Edward.
Or like I can't do the accent, but Ade, I know all our friends are dead, but if we could just get to the observatory, I'm telling you, we'll get all of our riches and be set for life.
I'm so tired of your shit, Edward. Oh, hold up, no. So there's a beautiful thing when Trinis cuss, right? So Trinidadians, we call ourselves Trinis.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's always something about your mother, your mother's this, your mother's that. I won't hit you with that, but it's a fun, colorful. Hold your mother, So yeah, he would probably tell or something like that.
I see. Okay. All right, that was awesome. All right, the other request we have is from Red Striker from Montreal. Hey. And he says, could you say the line, "Hey Rackham, the bandana is my thing. Please and thank you."
Man. Hey Rackham, the bandana is my thing.
Nice.
It's funny because as I was playing the main campaign, I wanted to say the same thing to James Kidd. I'm like, man, get out of here with that. No. It's funny because Rackham, another anecdote, the guy who plays Calico Jack Rackham, OT, never met the guy. Sean Baichu is a great actor here. He did all of the mocap, all the motion capture for Rackham, and then OT filled it in with his amazing vocal performance. But there was times when we needed to understand how OT would sound or what he would look like while he did it. And so we would watch his videos in the mocap studio, like his different casting videos, and be like, and it felt like he was in the room. So what's up, OT? Never met you, but if you're listening, what's up? That's it. He kind of looks like Craig David.
Craig David? No, okay. So those were awesome. Thank you for the lines.
Nope, the invoice is in the mail. No
So obviously, Adewale appears in both the main game and Freedom Cry. And one of the things that's been touched on by a few people, a few critics as well as fans, is like there maybe it's subtle to some people, maybe it's glaringly obvious, but like there's differences between the Adewale of both. So obviously, the difference is there's a substantial time period between both of those sort of episodes in his life, as it were. Can you sort of touch upon what you felt were sort of those differences? And it ties into a question by Grant from Arizona, who asks, how would you compare Adewale and his motives in Freedom Cry to Adewale in Black Flag?
Sure. Thanks, Grant. I love your state's iced tea.
I like their shack soda.
Delicious. Arizona. That's good. So Ade in Freedom Cry, it's about 15, 16 years after the end of Black Flag. And he's older. He's gone on. Edward's gone back to England. He's with his family. This goes back to what I was talking about before when with creating a backstory. It was really fun to make up, to create rather what would have happened in those 15 years. Some of it I won't share because it's fun. Internal personal choices that were made between myself and Jill, who wrote it.
Okay.
And it was also the transition of Darby's writing to Jill's writing. And Jill, I know Jill because I worked on Liberation with her playing Agate. And she also worked on Black Flag. She wrote all the Aveline side content and a lot of other stuff. And so I'm familiar with both Darby and Jill's style of writing. But when it came to incorporating that into character choices of how it makes him different, it was fun to choose. Okay, he's older now. He's wiser. He's not just about plundering and finding, glory. There has to be more to this life. If not, what are we doing here? And so you can see that in his choices, in his voice. You can hear it in his even in his body. He's less fidgety in Freedom Cry than he is in Black Flag. It's a subtle thing, but I made sure to when I'm allowed to stand still, I try to stand still as much as possible to show that he is rooted in himself. Where in Black Flag, he's pointing and shouting and yelling all over the place. But Freedom Cry, like he's very deliberate. If he's gonna take that cutlass, that machete, and slash you in your face, he's gonna do it full out. He's not gonna, it's deliberate. And so all his choices are big, strong choices.
What about his the question specifically kind of talks about his motives, and so if you would kind of compare between the two.
Sure. So like spoiler alert. God, I'm
you
tired
don't
of saying
have to
that.
say it. We said at the beginning.
Spoilers, everybody. So as we know, I'll say this: Freedom Cry is not about race, but there is a lot of stuff about race in the game. Like it's not about race fully, but to deny that factor of it is ridiculous, right? Yeah. So slavery itself is something that should be remembered, should be acknowledged. And again, all props to Ubisoft for even breaching that content, man, because it's so powerful. Like I spoke a bit with Gary Steinman on the UB blog about this. Yeah. There's a difference between someone being a slave and someone who is enslaved. Yeah. Like people are enslaved. Nobody wakes up and thinks of being a slave as an occupation. If you do, it's because you are enslaved. Your mind is enslaved. Your soul is enslaved. Your thoughts and your creativity is enslaved. And that's not by choice. That's something that's taken from you. And so Adewale's motives, coming back to your question, he gets shipwrecked in Haiti and he meets these amazing people who look like him, but he's still stranger to them because he doesn't understand their way of life or their culture. Even though they're black, all black people are not monolithic. We're not all cut from the same stone. And so to the overseers and the slave masters, he's just another runaway. But even the people of Saint-Domingue notice him as an outsider. They call him blanc, foreigner. And they see that because they know he's not from there, even though physically they might look alike. But culturally, they're worlds apart. And so his motives, he sees these people, these beautiful people who look like him, who are going through what he lived as a child. And he can't stand, knowing the power he has now that he's gained throughout his life, he can't stand to see this injustice. And so he makes a choice. And he says, you know what? No, I'm not leaving. I'm not going to just find a ship and run off. I'm going to stay here and help these people to help themselves because he has the power to do that. In a lot of ways, like I've read I try not to read comments and all these things because it's whether you get a review from somebody who just started writing that's amazing or an offer review from someone who's been writing for 10 years, it's just an opinion, right? So, and that's for games, that's for theater, that's for everything. Opinions are amazing. When they're asked for, lovely. When not, who gives a fuck? So, of course they come into play with marketing and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, an opinion is just an opinion, and it shouldn't reflect your quality of your work. So when there's comparisons to like, oh man, this is like the Django of video games or all these stuff, like I see those references, but at the same time, it's its own thing. It's completely different, right? So I think the motives that we're able to show in Freedom Cry of just wanting people to have the choice, like every time you free someone who's enslaved in the game, there's these amazing one-liners that hit you like, you deserve to have a choice. Make your ancestors proud. Like all these badass one-liners. I'm like, damn, as I was playing it, I was getting excited. And I watch a lot of YouTubers play it just out of sheer curiosity to see what people's reactions were. And a lot of YouTubers who upload videos who play it, again, the play is not about race, the play, again, the game is not about race, but a lot of YouTubers who upload videos are not black. And so they upload the video and then I'm listening to their commentaries while they're playing. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, I'm freeing slaves. I freed 7 slaves. And then they get to sequence 8 and then they can't speak because they realize this is not a game. this is something that actually happened historically. This is fucked up. And people, like millions of people died. It's like, and you can hear them, you can hear the wheels in their brains go off, connecting what this game is trying to teach them historically about how messed up this world can be and how we have a choice whether we want to sit ignorantly by and let that happen or do something about it. It's pretty amazing.
Sorry, sequence 8, refresh my memory, and for anyone listening, is that when he's going into the governor's mansion, like disguise? Oh no, that's
sequence 8. Sequence 8 is a ship. The ship going down.
Oh yes. Right, when you're swimming through.
I myself, I had to stop. I literally stopped playing for like a few hours because I'm like, I was trying to get it all done in the same day. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. I just want to play and see all the work that we all did, and then I forgot about what happens, and then I got to that and I was genuinely like disturbed in the best of ways. Disturbed because I cared. Disturbed because this wasn't a game. This was like, wow, this is really hard to watch. It's hard to play. I can't press X right now. Like, let me put this down. So
it was a moment. It was for me. It was a moment because everything leading up to that point, or at least like I wouldn't put a time period on it, but sort of like when you start that sequence and everything leading up to that point, wasn't exploitative, if that makes sense. It wasn't just there for shock value,
right?
Which would have been a very easy thing to do. So obviously, everything up until that point sort of prepares you, but until it happens, you're still not. And then you think back and you're like, wow, okay, all of that dialogue makes sense, and then the moment itself happens and it hits you like it's to borrow a term from fandoms. It's like it hits you right in the feels because you're like, wow, okay. Wow. And again, props to the way you portrayed it and how it comes across on screen. You see the distress that he's in because the moment when he realizes I can't save all of these people,
right? No matter what you do.
And
actually, it's interesting you say that because in Black Flag, Edward goes to jail in Jamaica for a year or whatever, 13 months. To my knowledge, there was once upon a time supposed to be a sequence where you are Adewale and that thing happens there.
Yeah.
And it never happened. And I'm really glad it never happened because the DLC got to happen.
Yeah.
And so if it would have been arbitrarily stuck in Black Flag, I don't think it would have had the same impact as people having to play the whole story of Freedom Cry.
Yeah.
So coming back to Adewale's motivations, I was wondering if you had any thoughts between the main AC4 game and Freedom Cry, because some parts of it seem a little bit in kind of contrast to each other. So as an example, like in the main game, Ade kind of spends the entire game being like, Edward, stop chasing this observatory and like, let's link up with the assassins and like their cause is noble. Whereas in Freedom Cry, he's like, I got to get back to the assassins. But let me just like do all these slave stuff first. But also, kind of speaking to kind of earlier, you were talking about how when we were talking about Eddie's voice and kind of how when you grow up with violence or these kind of things that are imposed upon you, you don't want to be violent sometimes, a lot of the times, and contrasted with Freedom Cry, where he is possibly like the most violent assassin. It's his fighting style is hack at the enemy, and then if they're not dead, like repeat step one, like, and the blunderbuss obviously also is pretty great. And like all this stuff. Kind of your thoughts on that, especially I think also because escaped slaves, I think from that time period, like when they were freed or if they got away, like generally, obviously it doesn't apply to all of them, but a lot of them I think just wanted to be left alone, right? They didn't. In a lot of those cases. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts about kind of Ade's behavior and motivations in Freedom Cry compared to all of that.
Wow, that's a good question. There's a couple things. One is the frustration I talked about of seeing these people not able to live freely as he believes they should be able to. Another thing is, and it sounds corny, but every story is a love story, right? So we do crazy things for love sometimes. And so Bastien introduces a whole nother element to his life that he never even thought of. Like, who is this woman able to interact with Templars, own her own business while people are being whipped right outside. Like it's a whole other level of curiosity that he goes into, mixed with the frustration of wanting to help but not being able to. Like he's just one man, and the brutality is, I think a lot of that comes from it's like fight or flight type thing, and he has to fight when he run. Like if for anybody who's played it, you know that when like 8 guards attack you, it's I had to get out a smoke bomb once or twice, and that pissed me off because I don't like using smoke bombs. But
spoken like a true
it's
multiplayer fanatic.
Yeah, it's like it's hard to when you're only one person and you have to do everything. What do you do? You know, the brutality. You know, shout out to, like, I did a lot of the action myself, but the two stunt guys, Rodney and Dennis, my God, these guys are amazing. If you see Dennis, he's actually built like Adewale. He's dope. And like a lot of the hacking stuff is his body work. And man, this guy is like, it's so cool to see it all come together in the story because it's fueled by the story. The story really is the anchor to it. The frustration of not being able to do anything is you know, it has to come out somewhere. So I think a lot of that motivates it.
I see. And do you think it's also kind of just touching, like, kind of on a really raw nerve for him because, you know, he was a slave and growing up, and
Absolutely.
so seeing that, so that kind of maybe overrides his inner peace a little bit in some ways, where it's just like, I can't not do anything here, I guess.
Absolutely. If your whole life you were doing, if you were, that's a bad analogy. I won't even say that. If you like, imagine you grew up one way and then you free yourself from that and then you live your whole life and then somewhere along the end somebody tries to come and bring you back to how it was when you were doing that one thing in the beginning and put you back in that situation, and you're gonna fuck no, you're not gonna do that. You're gonna fight every way you can to stay out of that. So
yeah, I'm surprised. I'm actually kind of surprised the story didn't connect what he was doing with the assassin. Like the assassin stuff was kind of tangential. The assassin Templar stuff was all pretty tangential to Freedom Cry. But you know, the assassins really are about, you know, liberty and having the ability for people to choose, and slavery is like the complete, like, there you have no choice, right? And so it fits in very well. So I'm surprised he didn't work in a little more of like his creed into it and everything.
Yeah, it really reminded me of like Ezio and like that, the early storylines of that sense of wanting to, you know, just have that knowledge and that freedom without having been told what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
As opposed to Edward, who was like, give me some rum.
One thing that kind of stuck out to me, and I think Loomer kind of touched upon it, was towards the end, and I don't know if it was a deliberate decision or whether that was just the way it happened. But again, you know, Adewale didn't necessarily bring as much of this creed that he'd been a part of for so long into, you know, the events of Freedom Cry. I felt like it was more a personal thing for him, which isn't a problem at all. But sort of like, I also felt that like Adewale had always proved himself to be, you know, that foil to sort of Edward's maybe brash stupidity, if we can call it that. Edward was always chasing his, for a long time in the game anyway, was chasing that personal dream. And Adewale was always there to bring him down to earth with a third, right? And it's like, I felt like maybe, again, at the end of everything with Freedom Cry, we've already mentioned the spoilers, but like, maybe Adewale could have then, you know, linked everything to the creed. It was like, okay, so we've created this situation. Now let's have the assassins come and help the Maroons with this independence that they're supposedly going to have.
So this is really interesting what you're saying, and I love, because we had the same conversation in the studio when we were shooting. So shout out to Thomas Giroux, who directed it. He also directed Tyranny of King Washington.
Okay.
Thomas, he was incredible to work with, amazing director, and his whole team from UB Quebec City. So when we were getting down to the end, we're like, okay, but this happens and this happens, and even the moments with Bastien at the end.
Yeah.
And we realized we collectively came to the discovery that, sometimes happy endings are not a good thing, because it leaves you feeling like everything changed, when if history is our playground, we know better than to, a lot of things are still the same. So if everything was wrapped up, and I get what you're saying with Assassins and Templars too, it kind of gets brushed upon with the package and all that stuff. But this notion of a happy ending, or at the end, even when he gives Bastien the package and she touches it and he touches her and then she touches him and then he leaves, I was like, wait, can't they kiss? Like, isn't there like a...
Yeah.
And they're like, no, because it's not that type of ending. We're not allowed. I'm like, what do you mean we're not allowed? It's like, well, we're not allowed with what we're creating right now. We're not trying to create that fluffy, everything's gonna be okay. I love you, baby. Ah, and then like the clouds, like it's not that story. It's the story of, we're here fighting for freedom and suffering, and even though we fought for it and we killed the governor and he's dead and he suffered, now what? We still have shit to do, and it's not over, and it's never going to be over. So there's that sense of it. You know what I mean? Like it's ongoing forever. It's not a happy ending.
Yeah.
Like the cry for freedom doesn't end with the end of Freedom Cry. Like it's still going.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
and that might sound crazy pretentious, but you know what I mean.
No, I totally get it. It probably sounds really weird for a lot of people to hear me saying it, but I guess because of what I wanted from Freedom Cry, I just felt that maybe there might have been a little bit more to sort of the way he could have wrapped that, not necessarily wrapped up everything. That's one sort of touch point in history, as like you've said. That's one sort of blip in what was a very lengthy dark period in history.
Like let me I'll hit you with this, and like let this marinate and see it. Like we don't need to have a discussion on it, but
sure.
Literally, and Andy, you might know this, but there's a lot of studies that have been done. Somewhere between 9 million and 16 million enslaved people died on the journey from Africa over to North America. And I'll say that again. Between 9 and 16 million people died on the journey over. Not came over and then died. Yeah. Not were killed over there. On the journey on the sea.
Yeah.
Between 9 and 16 million people are estimated to have died on the journey over. And that's this crazy, untalked about thing in weird history that is never really acknowledged. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when I get online and I read like YouTube comments of people being so angry that, there's some weird, vicious racism on the internet that I don't understand.
Yeah.
And it's like, so you were mad at this fictitious animated character because what? Yeah. Because he did what to your life? Like, and the reason why these comments exist is the reason why this game needs to exist.
Yeah.
Because it's not over. Because people are still, there's all this misplaced anger and misplaced sense of, no, I don't like this because it makes me uncomfortable. But it's like, okay, why does it make you uncomfortable? Let's talk about it. And I'm really glad that at least Freedom Cry exists so that we can have those conversations. Oh, yeah. Because it's crazy to read some of the like, oh, I get it, Black Flag, and then words and words and words, right? Yeah.
No,
weird.
I'm totally with you on that. I said this. I was lucky enough to be able to talk about Black Flag a while ago, and I said I'm so happy to be a part of a company that's willing to take those risks, and I'm glad that Black Flag is a thing that exists, and long may it continue. So no, I totally agree with you on that point.
Like again, it's not about race. It's really not. But the sensitivity that comes up with so many of these topics, like it exists and it has to be acknowledged so that we can stop talking about it.
So we've talked a little bit about slavery and Freedom Cry, but we have a question from Nightmare95 who asks, Freedom Cry was quite daring in its approach to the subject of slavery. And he has 2 questions here. Do you feel the devs did a good job portraying it, and would you like to see more games tackle Black history?
Yes and yes. Yeah, I thought like some things were done that were amazing, and some things were done that could be improved upon.
Sure.
And I think as we go forward with pushing games forward, with pushing the whole industry forward, there's so much room. Like if you look at 2013, you had all the guys in Saints Row 4, you had Franklin in GTA 5, and you had Adewale. Of all the games in the world, like these are all the Black characters we see in animated games. It's crazy. So there's a lot of room to tell a lot of historical stories besides having to steal a car, kill a slave master, and do some LSD shit. Like Saints Row, I love it. It was like I try to play a lot of games just because I love gaming. But there's sometimes when you have more than one Black character in a game, there's like this, but I thought, they're not the same guy. Okay. And I'm like, what? How is that even a thing? Like this is like real life. Are you kidding me? I was really glad to see the same thing with Splinter Cell Blacklist. My good friend Dwayne Murphy, who plays Briggs in Splinter Cell. Shout out to Dwayne, because it was great. Like Adewale was doing his thing and Briggs was doing his thing at the same time. And I'm like, this is cool. Like we are seeing more and more and more games that are like real life. Yeah. If like they say the same thing about film and TV and theater. If you go to a play or if you turn on the television and you're watching a show and the cast that you see on the show does not reflect what you see when you're walking down the street, they're not telling you a real story.
Yeah.
Like it's so, there's a lot of room in the world to tell stories about a lot of cultures, like, and we need to really broaden that mindset.
I think Freedom Cry seems to be the most direct kind of Assassin's Creed game anyway, well, probably game in general, that kind of tackles slavery. You see it kind of at the very, very end of AC3. It is fairly prominent in Liberation as well, but not quite to the level where you're basically running around freeing, like you're not going around New Orleans and just liberating all the slaves in there, right? And
there's about like 10 people that you liberate in Liberation or whatever.
And then when Aveline goes to kind of like the mine area, there's more slave, but it's a little less steeped in history, I think, than going to like Port-au-Prince.
Right.
And I found it very, I don't know. I don't know if what I was really expecting with it is kind of interesting. I see a lot of potential, I think, is what I see a lot in Freedom Cry. In the way it's tackling slavery. You see it kind of creeping up more and more through Ubisoft games. Like I said with AC3, it was just a minor kind of thing at the end, kind of reference here and there. Liberation, it was more prominent, but that's also mainly on a portable handheld and coming out as a downloadable title. It's not the big budget title that Ubisoft puts millions of dollars into marketing every year, right? And then more and more, now it's like a DLC. And it's just creeping closer and closer. And I see like a lot of potential. There's kind of, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on, because I found this kind of interesting. There was a review I read about Freedom Cry from, I think it was GameSpot, and they were talking about kind of the gameplay mechanics of handling slavery. And they were talking about, and I kind of found this to be my experience too, but you're going around the city and you have to liberate these slaves, right? And it's a little weird sometimes because they respawn the events in like pretty much the exact same way. So you'll run across this area and like escaped slave is being chased by his master. You go down and kill the guy, and then like he's free, and he's like thanks you. But then like as you walk by it again, like the exact same thing happens, and it's they had kind of like issues with that. They said it kind of like it can kind of take you out of the moment, but they also said, well, it's also probably a commentary on how it's you can't just go around and liberate the whole city and then be like, well, we have solved slavery in this city. Like, I'm going back to the assassins. Like, you know what I mean, right?
Right. And we were talking about this too. Yeah. Like, when was it? Just the other day, Esco.
Yeah.
With the plantations and stuff. Like they respawn right when new owners move in.
Yeah.
And I guess from a game point of view, there needs to be that ongoing something to do.
Yeah.
Like. And it, on a deeper level, it definitely can mean that, this is how life was. Things kept going.
Yeah.
And so if you take it from that point of view, then yeah, it totally makes sense. I could see where people's like issues were with, man, there's so many people enslaved here. What do I do? It's like, because like, and then so if you choose to put down the controller and not play anymore, you realize, whoa, I have a choice to not free people. That's messed up. Like, and that's kind of another like level that'll hit you if you like, man, there's so many people enslaved here. Can I like find a chest to loot or something? It's like it hurts your brain. Yeah, it hurts your brain because morally you want to free people. You want people to not be being whipped and their heads dunked in the water and branded and all these things. So when you play the game, that's what you're gravitated towards. But yeah,
yeah, it's kind of yeah. I had these really weird. Like I said, I didn't really have any expectations for Freedom Cry, but I found myself like confronted with some kind of like weird feelings as I played through it that I haven't experienced in any of the games. I played through Liberation as well. I didn't feel it, but like in the case of
did you have feelings of love?
Of love, yes, I did. In addition to those, also, but like when, but you know, it's like there is that part of you that's like, oh, I want to help this escaped slave. But if you've already helped him 3 times, there's a part of you that's like, well, I don't want to not help an escaped slave. But then the other part of me is like, fuck that, man. I've already helped you 3 times. Like, how many times are you going to get recaptured and run away? Like, kind of like that again.
And in that argument, like it pushes gaming forward on a moral level. Yeah. Because the choices you make of, man, do I find all of these chests and synchronize this windmill, or do I help people?
Yeah. And then, and do you help them even knowing that it's not going to actually affect the game world? Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, you're making a difference to that one person, but the overall, you're not going to abolish slavery on your own, right? It's kind of interesting things. And also, I found it really interesting, like, you know, infiltrating these plantations and like just killing these people. It's funny because like in all the previous games, some people have kind of made light of this, but it's like you just go around, like a lot of these guards like in Rome and stuff, just doing their job, and you just like walk up and like stab them and like walk away and like, oh, no, I'm Ezio. Like, and it's just like those guys got totally fucked for no reason. Like probably they could have been saints for all you know. Like they're just doing their job, right?
But they got, as Ade says, they got killed on principle, right? The principle is you are like, live as you want. That's fine. Once you're choosing how to live, hold someone else down. Then there's a problem. Right. So
it's true.
I feel like to touch on sort of like the respawning aspect, and this is what I told you, Tristan, when we spoke about it. I felt that it could have probably been a bit more dynamic, you know, in that like as you liberated more slaves, there was more of sort of like an uprising. There were pockets of resistance somewhere. So maybe you had a situation where you're running past this slaver who's leading slaves along the street, and before you even did anything, I don't know, some more people who you previously liberated come out to aid you or something, or like the frequency with which with which it happens.
That happened. Well, there was like 5 guys who would like the warriors would follow you through the bushes.
Yeah, they give you access to the groups of maroons to help you. So they kind of do that, but I mean, this is what I mean when I say I see a lot of potential.
But it wasn't like the wave.
Because this is done on a DLC budget. You know, I mean, done for, you know, really well for what it was. But it's like I can see in the future. I'm just excited that we're even tackling subjects like this because you see, I see potential in the future for like a full-blown big budget game, maybe not even AC, but like because a lot of these slavery things are kind of grafted onto the existing Assassin's Creed framework, you know what I mean? And in some cases it's a little it doesn't feel quite as cohesive, I think, as someone could do. Just like I don't know what it is, but like my mind kind of goes to The Last of Us, just maybe like in tone, like telling these more mature stories and stuff. And like, you know, The Last of Us is something that was freed completely from the restraints of the franchise. A lot of people have been saying like, oh, like, you know, AC4 would have been a great pirate game without all the assassins bullshit. And I'm like, well, whatever. I thought it worked integrated pretty well. But Freedom Cry almost feels more to me like that kind of thing where it could be separate. And it just, I'm just excited about all these, like, us kind of mentioning the moral things. Like, I found myself actually questioning partially because Adewale is so brutal in Freedom Cry, but it's like as you just go down this plantation and mow them down, it's like, wow, this is pretty. It's funny because I never really gave a second thought to killing any of these guards. Like in previous games, we were just doing their job and stuff. But then it's just like, wow, I wonder, like, I don't know. It brings up some really weird questions in my mind. Like, is it right to just go down and mow down like all these people? It's just because I don't know. It brings us some really weird questions.
It's funny that you bring up The Last of Us, because when we were shooting Freedom Cry, I had just finished playing The Last of Us, and Troy Baker is just, let's work together, Troy. Troy Baker, Dave Fenoy, all these guys, like, I want to work with you. Anyway, when I got to the end of that, I literally sat there questioning what I thought about my view of the world at the end of The Last of Us. And then the next day we were rehearsing for one of the scenes in Freedom Cry. And, they say, like, you are what you eat, or like you are what you take in. If you eat vegetables, you'll be one way. Same with like music. If you listen to all like acid jazz, you'll be one way for a week. Or whatever is in your surroundings, if that's what's in you, that's kind of what you put out. And so I think having a lot of that on my mind really influenced choices I made performing in Freedom Cry too, because it was that sense of, this is that dark, a realistic cinematic of a game. It's not like I won't name games, but there's some games where the cinematics are like, what the fuck is this? Like, it's like it's so it was definitely an influence in terms of the tone that I really loved where they were going with that as a game, because it was just heartbreaking, man.
Okay, so we should probably wrap up the podcast soon. So why don't we end with you kind of giving people kind of an idea on what you're working on for upcoming projects that you can talk about anyway.
There's always a lot of stuff on the go. I guess Loomer will post links and stuff to like websites and all that underneath. But coming up within the year that I can talk about, there's a few movies coming out that I'm a part of or in. This movie called Brick Mansions, where I get to work with the RZA from Wu-Tang. It's also the last movie Paul Walker did while he was in Montreal. So check out Brick Mansions when it comes out. There's something I'm working on right now, another a film-wise. If you guys have played Far Cry 3, you know who Michael Mando is. Good friend of mine as well. He plays Voss in Far Cry 3. And him and I are working on something that might be on your TV screens pretty soon. So keep an eye out for that. There's always a lot of voice and commercial and game and theater stuff on the go. But just so that everybody stays happy, I'll let you click links and I won't talk about anything so nobody gets in trouble.
Just a friendly reminder that the Assassin's Creed Liberation HD remaster is coming out very soon. I'm hoping to have this podcast out before the game is released. It's coming out on January 14th and 15th, depending on your region and platform. So you can check out Tristan playing Agate in that game as well.
Yeah. It's for if you do not have a PlayStation Vita and you have not seen or played Liberation, definitely pick it up. Like talking about pushing games forward, this is our first female assassin. And she's badass. You think Adewale is badass? Like Aveline is amazing. Amber Goldfarb, who plays her, is a good friend of mine. She's amazing, and it's definitely gonna be well received, I hope. So check out Liberation HD.
Oh yeah, Aveline's a fan favorite. So I mean,
she's more brutal than. No, she's not more brutal than Adewale.
I don't think so.
I love that one move where he sticks the machete in the guy's leg and then just like punches him. I was like, oh my god, this is ridiculous.
Yep.
And amazing. One final question from the fans. Speaking of the future, this one comes from Chairman Meow from Wisconsin, who asks, would you be interested in Adewale getting his own game?
That's a real question?
Yeah. Of course it's a real question.
Yeah. Like, I think we all know the answer to that.
That's true.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, let's hey, somebody start a petition, make it happen. Yeah.
Hashtag Team Adewale on Twitter. Let's get it trending.
You know what? Thank you to everybody who's using hashtag Team Adewale, because that was a thing I just decided to throw up there, and
Yeah.
it's good rap. Yeah. So
Yes.
Yeah, but I'll say in the interim, like while things are coming out or stuff is being announced or whatever, you could always there's tons of videos of all kinds of fun stuff that you can find from stuff I've done in the past, different movies, and like the first movie I ever did is still like one of my favorite things I've ever done. It's called How She Moved. It's a dance movie. Rutina Wesley from True Blood, like we're in that together, so check that out. But you can check out the Comic-Con panel we did at Comic-Con Montreal. Michael Mando, myself, Neil Napier, Amber Goldfarb, Elias Tufexis, and Sean Bechu. That's on YouTube somewhere, but that's a lot of fun. And there's just a lot of good stuff. So keep your eyes peeled. And this is definitely the beginning of a lot of great things. So thanks you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us. So that's going to wrap up this episode. And we talked about links earlier. You can keep up with Tristan at tristandlalla.com or on Twitter at tdlalla and Facebook at facebook.com/tdlalla2, the number 2 at the end of that. I'll post all these links in the video description so you can easily click them. You can keep up with my videos and future podcasts by subscribing to my channel here at youtube.com/Loomer979. You can also find me on Twitter and Facebook at Loomer979 and EscoBlades at acinitiates.com and on Twitter and Facebook at EscoBlades. So from all of us here, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next episode. See you.
take care. Bye.
Peace.